All right. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for you also for hosting this series and this Dare to Restore 2024. I love it. I love the sound of that, and I also really resonate with the theme and the this 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 theme around embracing the impact of small, meaningful actions in everyday life. And I think, and that's really what we're going to talk about here, very practical in that way. Um, and I want to start with a centering practice because we're going to do this many times during this hour. And so we're going to start from with centering. So this webinar is going to be interactive with you may not have a chance to, to there's a lot of people on the call, so you might not be able to say your ask your question or be heard, or we probably won't have like groups or anything like that. But I do invite you to interact, to if you want to turn your camera off, if that feels more comfortable, to do that, and just really have a chance to practice the technique that I'm going to demonstrate and have you do several times. So do however you feel comfortable, really. This is your time. And there'll be times when you'll want to come on camera, and that's fine. Times you want to go off camera, and that's fine. Whatever works. Um, so for this practice, I'm going to invite you to keep your eyes open, um, and practice with your eyes open. I think a lot of times we tend to close our eyes when we do things like this, but it's really important to practice with your eyes open, because in life our eyes are always open, unless we're sleeping or taking a nap, and that's great. But usually when we are under pressure or under stress, you know, we're seeing it. Our eyes are open. So finding your feet on the floor, just noticing the soles of your feet touching the floor. Just notice the sensation of that. And then feel yourself supported either by the floor if you're standing, or if you're sitting, feeling supported by the chair. And make sure your arms are uncrossed, that there's extension in your legs, that there's extension in your arms. So both your limbs are uncrossed. And then we're going to take a breath, and on that inhale, you're going to imagine your breath going up and out the top of your head. So inhaling up, imagine the breath going out the top of your head, and exhaling down. Long exhale. So let's do that again. So on the inhale, imagining your spine, that there are little clouds between the vertebrae. And so inhaling up and exhaling down, softening your chest. And think of something that makes you smile. And then connect to the space around you. Here's where it helps to see the space. So you look about 6 feet in front of you, and 6 feet behind you, and 6 feet on either side of you, and 6 feet above you, and 6 feet below you, and get a sense of the space that you're surrounded by. And this is like maybe a bubble of space, kind of like a shock absorber. So really expand into the space all around you. And then relax your jaw, relax your shoulders, and just invite a little bit of ease into your being. What would it be like if there were just a little bit more ease in my being? So there you go. That's basic practice. That's a centering practice, and we're going to do it several times um, during this hour. I want to let's see. I'm going to share my slides. There's so much I want to share with you, but I'm going to just start with my slides for now. So there's our title slide. So 3 things we're going to look at today in this hour. One is the restorative practice of centering, which we've already done once. And we're going to go do a little bit more of that. We're going to talk about the restorative connection to inner wisdom or inspiration, and the restorative focus in one area of your life. So the practices around centering that we're going to do come from the martial art of Aikido and the discipline of mindfulness. And My teacher, who is pictured here, Wendy Palmer, founded or this work called Leadership Embodiment, and I'll be drawing from that in this hour. I also teach a class through Pod called Introduction to Leadership Embodiment, where we go into a lot more depth. But in this class, you'll get the basic practice, and I hope that you can take that with you as you leave. Um, the practices come from the martial art of Aikido. When you think about martial art, Aikido is a peaceful martial art, and it kind of came out of World War II in Japan. This Morihei Ueshiba, who is the founder of Aikido, was a martial artist. He's like, we got to find another way. Like we can't keep doing this. And so he developed Aikido out of his desire for how do we find peace in conflict. And so since this is a martial art, you imagine that people are training in dojos or studios where martial artists train, and there's kicking and there's throwing punches and throwing strikes and sometimes using swords and wooden swords and wooden knives. So it's very activated. Like there's a lot of stress, and the practices come from how do you handle that? How do you stand in the midst of such activity and some what can look like attack towards you, and how do you stay centered? And the tendency is going to be go off center. That's just a basic human response to not be centered in those times, to go into sort of fight, flight, or freeze, and to and not be skillful in those moments. So the practice is how do you stay centered? How do you notice that you've come off center and come back to center? And Wendy Palmer, who's a teacher of this work, after so many years of studying students in her martial arts class, realized that there was some practices that people could do who weren't necessarily martial artists, that there were just physiological things, physiological processes and practices that we can all benefit from in our daily lives. And sometimes daily life can feel like a little bit like a martial arts studio, with things coming at us in email and texts and all this stuff, and reading the news, and then there's a meeting, and I mean it can feel like a lot of that coming at us. And how do we hold our center when all of this is happening? So the we work with the body, and we work with the body because the body always wins. And if we could have done a lot of studying and a lot of reading of books about how we are under stress, and how to better communicate with each other and how to manage conflict, but in the moment of stress or pressure, the body wins. And all of that wonderful learning is not accessible to us because we're in a different space physiologically. So what happens? Let me just look at my next slide here. So what happens when we get stressed? I'd love to hear from you. You can just write in the chat, like, what do you notice physiologically when you are stressed, when you get stressed? You can just put some things in the chat here. Oh, here we go. Tension, great. Heart rate elevated, heart rate increases, anxiety increases, right? We get hot, right? Migraine, tightening, brain shuts down. Oh my gosh, like we know it. It's so familiar. We know it's so much pain, tightness, increased heart rate, irritability. Yeah, all this stuff. And if we if we could read about how to manage this, and we could read about it and do it, well, we would have done it a long time ago. But we can't. We got to engage our bodies. We can't just read about it. Trouble focusing. Yes. So all of you, what you're describing is the impact of stress on our bodies. When we are stressed, we tend to constrict and contract. We lose access to higher order thinking. Our energy goes towards defending, um, uh, survival. We just go into more of a flight or fight mode. I can't even speak when I even imagine myself getting there. I already can't stop. I can't speak. So how do we observe ourselves and give ourselves space then to come back to center? Um, and so this is the practice. So we're going to practice it again. I'm going to show my slides. Uh, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this again. We just did it once before, so this is a repetition. So once again, so finding your feet on the floor and noticing the support of your chair, support of on your back if you're sitting, uncrossing legs, uncrossing arms, relaxing your hands, inhaling up, exhaling down, softening the chest, thinking of something that makes you smile. And inhale again, lengthening the spine, imagining little clouds between the vertebrae. And exhaling down. And now expanding into the space around you, looking around you, looking above and below, looking from side to side, in front and in back. Imagining this sort of bubble of space that is like a shock absorber against the pressure and stress. And imagine also that in this space there are resources. And then relax your jaw, relax your shoulders, and bring in just a little bit more ease. So the steps here are all correspond to a physiological response in your body. We uplift, we lengthen. That's to activate a little bit more testosterone. That's to bring in that a little bit sense, a little bit more confidence. And it counteracts the sort of cortisol flood that happens when we get stressed. The thinking of something that makes you smile activates oxytocin, which is a stress hormone. And this stress hormone often gets activated during times of stress or during times of like emergencies, or think about floods or natural disasters. And it is oxytocin is a hormone that is kind of called the hug or the love hormone, but it's a connecting hormone. We seek to connect. We seek to say we're all in this together during these moments. So that's the thinking of something that makes you smile. Expanding into the space all around you. That's really to emphasize that you want to do the opposite of contraction, right? You want to expand into the space. And in this space, there are resources that are accessible to you. We tend to constrict a lot. We're in front of computers a lot. We're in front of a computer right now. So we tend to constrict our bodies and constrict, and we get a little bit of tunnel vision. The world starts to narrow. And so our focus narrows and our ability to respond skillfully also narrows. So that is one of the reasons why we emphasize this sort of expansion into the space. Also, if you're a martial artist and you have a punch coming at you and all you're doing is focusing on the punch, you lose the room. You lose your options. All you have is the punch. But if you're able to focus on the space and that punch is coming at you, you have access to other options, other possibilities open up. You might duck, you might go around, you might redirect. A lot more things become available to you in those moments. Relaxing jaw, relaxing shoulders, because we carry so much stress in those places. So let's try a little experiment. And the body learns really well through contrast and exaggeration. So we're going to do a little experiment where I'm going to invite you to think about something that is stressful, or like something that's irritating, or maybe it happened earlier today and you're like, it's an irritation that you're holding or a stress that you're holding. And usually it's not so hard to come up with one of these, but if you do need one, I can share one of mine. So think about this, and then as you're thinking about your stressor, notice how your body starts to constrict and exaggerate a little bit your sort of constricted pattern. It doesn't take much really for you to go into this. It's fairly second nature. For me, my legs are crossed underneath me. My arms are crossed. I've already started to, the space is constricted. I'm really focusing in on the keyboard. So I've lost the room completely. And I'm thinking about this thing, and my brow is furrowed. And just hold that for a few seconds. It doesn't take long for cortisol to start coursing. All right. And now uncross your legs, uncross your arms, shake it out a little bit. And we're going to recenter. So again, feeling your feet on the ground, lengthening your spine, imagining little clouds between your vertebrae, and inhaling up. Imagining that the breath coming up and out the top of your head and exhaling down. Again, inhaling up and exhaling down. That long exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And then connect to the space around you. Expand into that space all the way around. Relaxing your jaw, relaxing your shoulders. Bring in just a little bit of ease. And then think about that thing again. Whatever it was, that irritation or stressor, bring it back up in your mind. And now you're thinking about it, but you're thinking about it from a centered place. You're holding center against this pressure. You've got this pressure of this idea, this thought, but you're holding center. And notice what's different about that. And if you're, what I'm noticing and thinking about this thing is that from a centered place, a little bit more trust comes in. Oh, I think maybe I can trust that person a little bit more. Or maybe I have, oh, there's an idea, or maybe there's a little humor that comes in, or maybe I get the sense of, oh, I'm going to get through this. It's all right. It's all going to work out. So what are you noticing? Go ahead and in the chat, you can, let's talk about what you're noticing when you're, the difference between when you're centered and you're engaging with this irritation or when you're not centered. So sensing more options, sense of calm and clarity. The problem seems less dire. Get the sense of confidence. I can get through this. Feels more doable. I can see better. So you get a sense of perspective. Easier to focus on the solutions. Feeling hopeful. The image is further away, so you get a sense of space. So someone's talking about some anxiety over something really big like surgery and being able to get just a little bit more space. And that is so important. Feel a little bit more calmer in my body and my head. Great. So you're all noticing a lot of benefit from just taking that moment to center, and you're activating a different physiological response in your body. Go back to my slides here. So centering, it's that sort of a concept, and we sort of have a felt sense of what that's like in our bodies, and you've described it in some of your chat comments. Wendy Palmer says, when we are in a centered state of being, we know that we are part of the continuum of life that is creative, compassionate, and inquisitive. Now, she meditated for 45 years, so she has a little she has a little practice. Center allows us to appreciate that everything changes. And then another martial artist named Richard Strozzi Heckler, who is also a big contributor to this field, calls center a kind of base camp, a coming home to ourselves that brings us present not only to the world, but also to what we care about. I think the more you practice this and the more you get that sense of what the center is, the more you you feel this, you experience this in your life, and it does take practice. Um, there's this quote that I love. Since we're on quotes, I'll just share this one with you, and I have it over my computer at my desk because it often comes in handy for myself and for the clients that I work with. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So that is by Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And if you know Viktor Frankl, you know that he was a Holocaust survivor and immigrated to the United States and was a great scientist here. And he wrote a book about his experience in concentration camps, and that is the book Man's Search for Meaning. And so um, here is this is what we're doing when we're centering. We're taking a pause, and we're finding this space and giving ourselves the power to choose our response. And in that response lies growth, freedom, other options. Um, so I often turn to this quote. So speaking of inspiration, that's the second practice we're going to work on today. And how do we connect to inspiration? How do we connect to inner wisdom? I have a teacher who says that we have enough knowledge in the world, and what we truly need is wisdom. And perhaps that's sort of heretical to say that in a university setting, but um, when you think about it, we know we have so much information in the world, but what we need is wisdom. And so, how do we get there? How do we access that? And the one way to start is to start right with what we know, who or what inspires us, and drawing from our personal history, our wisdom traditions, our teachers, our mentors, family members, friends, children, nature, art, pets, and two uh, human beings that really have inspired me a lot are these two gentlemen here, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And here are two people who have experienced very difficult lives: exile, poverty, discrimination, the inability to travel to certain regions due to geopolitical reasons. Um, and yet they have inspired so many people, and um, and they bring so much joy and humor wherever they go. And one of their last projects together was called The Book of Joy. And this picture is from the back of the book. I have the book right here. It's one of my favorites. And it's like, I read this because I think here are these human beings who endured so much in their lives, in their personal lives, and the impact of politics and geopolitical situations on their lives that were beyond what they out of their control, and yet they access joy. And so that really inspires me. So I think of people like that. And I'm sure that in your lives, there are people who inspire you, people who are here, people who have passed. They're part of your personal history. For children, our children inspire our from their for their creativity, their resilience, their courage, nature. Here's just a few pictures to help you think about who or what inspires you. You know, Gal Gadot inspires me. Uh, Wonder Woman. Like some, you got to find it. Um, One of the things here about inspiration is that we know that we live in there's a lot of anxiety around us, right? It's the world is very challenging. It's on a personal level, on a societal level, on a global level. We face a lot of challenges. There's a lot of uh, oh, a lot of challenges. I can't, oh, dysfunctions. That's the word I was looking for. A lot of dysfunctions in our systems. So we know that. And there always has been. So the invitation is how can we meet the challenges and the dysfunctions of our systems with equal or greater inspiration? How can we get bigger than that? And we can, because um, there, the more we think about inspiration, the more it builds upon itself. And I know um, I've been doing this work for 20 years, and uh, the more I think about inspiration, the more I am inspired. It's just it's a reinforcing loop, a virtuous cycle. And and so I encourage you to also think about what inspires you. Who do you want at your back? Who do you want at your back that says, you know, you are not alone here. You have inspiration, you have support from this inspiration. So I want to give you a few minutes here to just think about who or what inspires you. If you had someone who was at your back, who was like, uh, I'm here, like I got your back, who would that be? And I'll just give you a few minutes to think about that. And and then in like 3 minutes, we can write some stuff in the chat. But I want to give you a chance to think about it. So I see that I'm seeing the beginnings of some words in the chat. And so feel free to enter into the chat who or what inspires you. And we can fill the chat with inspiration. And that'll give other people ideas. I'll say, oh, yeah, right. I forgot. Right. So we have already, they're coming up. Surgeons at UW. Yes. Um, yeah. My toddler, my office mates, my grandparents, my sister, my dad. Yeah. Wonder Woman still. Someone likes Wonder Woman. Nature, flowers, even the weeds. Weeds are very resilient. My husband, my sister, my best friend Sylvia, my cat, my choir. Oh my gosh, yes, music. Um, Malala, yes. My mother who passed last year, yes. And sometimes, yes, inspiration is tinged with sadness. There's a tenderness. So there's a lot. There are lot of inspiration here. Um, and 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 someone pointed out that sometimes this is difficult because we tend to, you know, see the faults. And absolutely, we're we there's sort of a negativity bias in humans, which is really interesting. But how can we reach beyond that? How can we also see the inspiration? Um, yes, music, the sky, a breeze. Yeah, absolutely. So there's so much inspiration. And sometimes it takes us a while um, to access it. Sometimes we need to sit with it a little bit and really ask ourselves, who or what inspires me? And it's a practice in itself to come back to inspiration. Um, thank you for sharing your inspiration in the chat. So Wendy Palmer says she, she has a very practical side to her. It's a percentage gain. How much time do I spend on irritations or concerns versus the time I spend connecting to moments that make me smile? And so we can ask ourselves that question in a given day, in a given hour, um, in a given half hour. How much of that half hour is spent smiling and accessing inspiration, and how much of it is spent on attaching to irritations and concerns? It's a discipline. There's a lot to make us irritated and worried and concerned. And yet we also have access to something else. And how can we really develop that and have it become very accessible to us? And the more you think about it, the more you spend time on it, the more you access that inspiration and that wisdom. I'm going to check the chat here. Yes, really nice things here. Thank you all for your contributions to the chat. So I'm going to stop share here before we start our third focus here. The third thing that we're practicing is restoring focus. And I'm going to read a poem by David White. David White is a poet in the Pacific Northwest. He lives on Whidbey Island. And he's one of my inspirations. His poetry and his hearing him recite poetry is always very lovely and inspiring for me. But here's a poem that that is called Start Close In. And I usually read this poem every beginning of the year. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing, close in, the step you don't want to take. Start with the ground you know, the pale ground beneath your feet, your own way to begin the conversation. Start with your own question. Give up on other people's questions. Don't let them smother something simple. To hear another's voice, follow your own voice. Wait until that voice becomes an intimate, private ear that can really listen to another. Start right now. Take a small step. Take a small step you can call your own. Don't follow someone else's heroics. Be humble and focused. Start close in. Don't mistake that other for your own. Start close in. Don't take the second step or the third. Start with the first thing, close in, the step you don't want to take. And at the beginning of every year, I think of this poem, and I think of that, start close in, take the first step, not the second step, not the third step. Take the first step, the step may be the step you don't want to take. And so my invitation here, we're going to be a little bit counterculture. We're not going to resolve all the world's problems. And even for your own life, where can you focus your attention? So I'm going to share the screen here. And I have this little map here, this little diagram, which you should have gotten this as a handout prior to today. If you don't have it, I'm sure there's a way to get one to you. But really, it's a map, and it's not perfect. It's a diagram. It's a way to visualize information. And some of the categories here might fit, and some of them maybe they don't, and you might want to put in your own category, and that's fine. It's really as a tool to use however you would like to use it, however it's useful for you. And what you could do is you can sort of rate yourself on each of these little categories, how you think you're doing. Your satisfaction, your own satisfaction, not your satisfaction as judged by somebody else, but your own satisfaction in each area. and you can sort of see, it's like, where are you finding, higher satisfaction? Where might there be a little bit lower satisfaction? And this is a way to help identify, where shall I start? Where shall I start? Um, and so choosing one focus for the coming year. Um, and I always think everything is connected. Even though we're starting over here, it's all connected. So we're never really not addressing everything, because it all connects with one another. I see something in the chat. Okay, the way that this is designed is that 5 is high satisfaction, and 1 is lower satisfaction. So that's the way that's designed. So I want to give you a couple minutes to identify an area where you want to focus this year. Well, let's just take a couple minutes for that. So rating all ones. Well, it's interesting. Rating all ones, would that be a bad thing? I guess I don't know that I would say bad, but I would say perhaps that's where you want to put a little bit more emphasis. And if and if all of them are ones, well, maybe there's one that just calls to you a little bit more than the others. Remembering that it's all connected. Let's take about 30 more seconds. Someone has a question about what we define as personal growth. Well, it's kind of an open-ended category. Like that really is really very much a personal, um, it's whatever it means to you, personal growth. Um, it could be an enrichment, um, something that you want to do to enrich your life. Could be learning a new skill or whatever. It's really, and that's where I said you can change the headings if they don't work for you. All right, someone said start with love. Yeah. Um, I'm going to go to the next slide. So does anyone know what this picture is? If you do, you can put it in the chat. Any guesses what this might be? Someone might have seen this before. There's a lot of people here. Oh, someone is saying something. A brain. Oh, interesting. A plant crosscut, a stone. Yeah, those are great guesses. Um, it is a plant crosscut. It is the cross section of a pine needle under a microscope. So this is a pine needle, which is part of a branch, which is part of a tree. So this is the cross section of that pine needle. So when I look at something like this and I think about going micro and starting close in and starting, not trying to, solve everything, but picking one focus, how can I get even more micro, more specific in my focus? And to look at inside this pine needle is a universe. And so inside each micro is also a universe. I love that someone thought it was the brain. because I think that a cross section of the brain would look very similar. Um, so I'm going to encourage us to go smaller. So if you chose an area, let's say maybe you chose um, health. Uh, Actually, let me start someplace else. I'll go back to health. Um, Thinking about career, like maybe, or personal growth, let's say. Let's say in my career or personal growth, I want to become a better communicator. So that's what's going to be my focus. Okay, how can I get smaller? Maybe I want to learn how to ask better questions. Maybe I want to learn how to be a better listener, or maybe I want to know how to give feedback better. So that's going more micro. Um, Health, personal example. I started the year thinking, I really want to focus on my health. I want to improve my health. Then I thought, well, how about I start with my right foot? Because my right foot has actually been giving me it's been speaking to me. So what happens if I focus on my right foot? And and then the right foot is connected to the ankle, connected to the knee, connected to the hip, and then my back goes out. So like, oh no, now I have to work it on the left hip. Oh, but they're connected. The right foot is connected to the left hip. Um, and even though I starting with my right foot, now I'm thinking about different vitamins I could take. I'm having a different stretching routine. I'm seeing a chiropractor, a new one, and so it has opened up another area which I didn't even know was there. But it all started with focusing on the right foot. So it's all connected. And I didn't think I was going to be taking different vitamins, but now here I am taking different vitamins. So that's I'm being a little bit counterculture here in saying let's start micro and see where that takes us. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to go micro with your focus. If anyone wants to share in the chat, that's would be lovely. But I know this is kind of gets into sort of the more personal, and you may not want to share. But if someone has something that they want to put in the chat, that's sort of what they're thinking about in terms of their focus and going more micro, it'd be lovely to hear to see your comments. Yeah, someone's saying that um, it makes sense. They tend to do too many things at once. Yeah, so someone said here, my focus includes being more personal and asking more questions about what's going on in my friends' lives to connect with them. So maybe the focus, the general category might be about friends, or maybe it's love. And how do we have more love? As maybe we need to focus on connecting. Um, some other things. These are wonderful. Walk 5 minutes from sitting and back. Yes, that's I'm starting to do that. Getting up and walking around, just taking that movement break. Um, my right foot has been bothering me too. Yes, start with your right foot. Focus on scheduling a meetup with a friend, a time to try to start reconnecting. It's true. Like, how do we, like small acts, um, small doesn't mean insignificant. Small means that they're leverage points, that they're meaningful. They have a ripple effect. Sort of like dropping a pebble in water. The ripples are much larger than the pebble. Making delayed doctor's appointments, absolutely. Um, Sending out birthday cards and notes. These are all wonderful. Just these micro actions, these micro focus, and seeing where it leads us. Um, Yeah, Laura, thank you for your question around blood pressure. I'm not sure the answer. but that's a great question. What is the step? What is the micro step? Or maybe it's a couple. Maybe, that's the inquiry right there. Those are the questions. The 11 a.m. breaks with whole you is great for stretching and back support. Um, personal growth, organization, picking a small place to organize, to start close in. These are all great. Thank you for all of this. Yep. Responding in the moment to things. I'm thinking of somebody, I'm going to reach out to them right now. It's hard to aim small like this. I appreciate that, Christopher. Thank you. It's you're right. Sometimes we have the big in mind. So we start with the end in mind, we see the vision, the goal, and so on. But how do we work back to start with the steps that bring us to that end goal? That's the other part of visioning, is also knowing what steps to take to get there. Okay. Now we're going to add another piece to this. So you have your focus. What is a quality that will support you in your focus? So if I haven't been able to get to the doctor's appointments, what quality is going to help support me to make those appointments, to remind me to, if I want to organize my space, take a little piece at a time to do so. What quality am I going to need to stay, focused on my goal? I'm just pausing here because I saw I saw a question in the chat where it was, how do we take care of any of these when taking care of others? How do we give priority to any of these focus? Appreciate that question. There is a book that I recommended that is in the list of resources on your handout, and it's called Rest is Resistance, a Manifesto by Tricia Hersey. And I recommend that book because she speaks to that, and how do we take care of ourselves when we have so much on our plates and there's so much expected of us in the caretaking of others? And I think I recommend that book. It's really it's an eye opener. It's a really interesting perspective, and it's really changed the way I see how I take care of myself. Um, and again, it's back to the micro moments. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just looking at I like starting with the small idea of settling in a long-term goal. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your comments in the chat. I'm having trouble sort of seeing all of your comments and also paying attention to you here. So I'm catching up a little bit. But those are great questions. And how do we do this? And that's what I really like about this theme around dare to restore and the small actions that we can take. And when we're doing a centering practice, it's not even a minute. That's a small amount of time to bring center back to us, to come back to the sense of base camp, that sense of home, that sense of resourcefulness and resilience, sense of inspiration. So when you're thinking about what is a quality that will support you in your focus, when I think about qualities, I think of words like patience, compassion, love, joy, persistence. Think about this hummingbird, like the qualities of the hummingbird, such sense of determination and persistence. So what are some of the qualities that come up for you when you're thinking about what's a quality that will support you? Curiosity. Yes, thank you, Sophia. Peace. Go ahead and put them in the chat if you'd like. Consistency, calmness. Yeah. Variety. What if there were a little bit more variety? Initiative, ruthlessness, determination, patience, wonderful, acceptance. Yes, these are all self-compassion, patience. These are great, great, great qualities. And when I think about a quality, I think I don't need another thing on my to-do list. So, what is something, a quality that's already part of me that I can amplify? Like you know, humor. What if there were just a little bit more humor in it to support me? Lightness. What if there were a little bit more lightness to support me? What if there were a little more joy? Those things that sometimes fall by the wayside, and they're really important to me. I know that they sustain me. What if there were a little more love to support me? What would that be like? So um, we're going to put this all together now, and we're going to put together this centering practice that includes the basic practice that we've tried. We've already done 2, 3 times. This will be our 4th time. And then we're going to add your quality. What is that quality that you would like to have a little bit more of that'll support you in your focus? What if there were just 2% more of this quality? What would that be like? So give yourself a chance to embody that quality a little bit more. And then invite your inspiration team at your back. So we talked about inspiration. I asked you who inspires you, and you came up with some inspiration. So bring them into your space. Bring them at your back. Who's got their hands on your back? Who you can draw on for inspiration? I don't know if you know this, but the human body is mostly made up of space. In the cells, there's a lot of space. So we're really porous. And so, how can we allow that inspiration to come through us? And so that when we are engaged with others, we're leading from that inspiration. Or when we're engaging with ourselves, we're leading from inspiration. So, let's take a moment to center again. All right. So, again, noticing your feet on the floor, notice yourself supported by the chair or supported by the floor. Keeping your eyes open, soft gaze on the horizon, relaxing your arms, relaxing your legs, and finding a little extension in your spine, imagining there are little clouds between the vertebrae in your spine. And then inhale up, imagining your breath going up and out the top of your head, and exhale down, softening your chest and thinking of something that makes you smile. Inhaling up again, exhaling down. 3 is a magic number. One more time. Inhaling up, exhaling down. Now expanding into the space all around you, above and below, from side to side, in front and in back. Thinking of something that makes you smile, relaxing your jaw, relaxing your shoulders. And bring in just 2% more of that quality, whatever it is. What if there were just a little bit more of your quality right now? What would that be like? And then also invite your inspiration team into the space. They're at your back. They're coming through you. That inspiration is coming right through you. You are not alone here. So this takes practice. It's kind of like a many times a day thing. Um, Given that it comes from martial arts and people are facing sort of attackers all the time, they don't just practice once, they practice all the time. So they get better at it so that, they lose their center, but they recover it really quickly. Same is for us. We'll lose our center undoubtedly, probably in the next 5 minutes, because we're human. And then we have a way to recover. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time, your interest, your curiosity. and your willingness to practice. Here's my email. Feel free to email me with any questions, or we have just a couple minutes. I don't know that we have a whole lot of time, but I'm happy to hang out a little bit.